It was supposed to be just another quiet Monday morning. The kind where you sip coffee on your porch, listen to your old dog snore under the swing, and watch the sunrise over your land, the land you worked for, paid off, defended from every debt collector and tax notice with a kind of quiet pride that only a few men your age truly understand. But that morning, what stood before me was not a sunrise. It was a damn concrete colossus, 3 stories high, built right in the middle of my ranch. And let me say this right off the bat, this isn't a story about zoning codes or bureaucratic mix-ups. No, sir. This is about something far worse. This is about someone looking at your land, your life, and deciding without ever shaking your hand or looking you in the eye that they could take it. Like you didn't matter. Like you weren't even there. I stood there with boots still caked in Montana dust, suitcase in one hand, the other gripping the rusted gate that had guarded this land since the day I bought it. It was supposed to be a gate to peace. Now it opened to chaos. Right there in the middle of my damn pasture was a full-scale, multi-level parking garage. Not some plywood skeleton either, this was fully operational. Fresh paint, electric lights, metal railings that gleamed like a Vegas hotel ramp. It even had a working elevator strapped to the side like some twisted accessory. My name is Ethan Sanders. I'm a retired firefighter, 59, pushing 60 with a back full of scar tissue and a dog named Moose who's more loyal than most humans I've met. I bought this land in northern Texas 3 years ago when I cashed in every penny from my pension and savings. No mortgage, no bank. Just me, a dream, and the quiet hum of crickets at night. I didn't buy it for profit. I bought it to breathe. To live my last chapters far from HOA meetings, petty neighbor feuds, and the madness of cities that forget the names of their own streets. So imagine this. I'm barely back from visiting my daughter in Montana, 2 weeks gone. I come home to find floodlights searing my pasture like a football field. Honking horns. Oil leaks on the grass where my horses used to graze. And some guy in a yellow vest waving cars through like he's directing traffic at a shopping mall. No calls. No permits. No letters stuck in the mailbox. Just invasion. I muttered out loud, "This can't be happening." Right then, a black SUV rolled up beside me. The window glided down, and out popped the kind of smile you know is about to say something that'll raise your blood pressure. "You must be the new HOA president," she chirped. "So great that you approved this project. It's already solving the overflow issue." I blinked. I said, "What did you just say?" She pointed like she was showing off a new pool. "The parking garage for Willow Creek Hills HOA. It's genius putting it on this empty lot. You're a hero, Mr. Sanders." Empty lot. A hero. My hands were trembling now, not from age, not from fear, but from a growing fire inside my chest. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Lady, this is my ranch. I'm not part of your HOA. I didn't even live in Willow Creek Hills." That smile of hers turned into a freeze-dried stare real quick. She rolled her window up like I was the one trespassing and peeled out down the gravel drive like a ghost fleeing daylight. That's when I saw the sign, freshly screwed into the wooden fence I built myself. Property managed by Willow Creek Hills Homeowners Association. Trespassers will be fined. It had their logo, their fonts, their smug little motto, progress through community. And for a second, I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. But this wasn't a dream. It was my land, and they claimed it. Let me ask you something, man to man. What would you do if someone came onto your land while you were away and just started building? Not a shed, not a fence, but a concrete monster that hums with fluorescent light and spits out strangers into your front yard like ants from a hive? Now, here's the kicker. I had locked my front gate when I left. Left Moose with my buddy Hank, who lives just 10 minutes down the road. Hank's a retired cop with a knee that clicks when he walks, but he's always been sharp as a tack. He told me over the phone that 2 days after I left, a crew rolled in, said they had orders, said I'd approved the construction. He tried calling the county. No one answered. He couldn't stop them. And you want to know the scariest part? They had documents. Signed. stamped, official looking. Said I leased him the land for 40 years, for $1 per year, 40 damn years for $1. You ever feel that drop in your gut when something's so wrong your brain can't even process it yet? That's where I was. Standing there like a fool with his suitcase, while a fleet of SUVs parked on my grass, while kids spilled out of vans onto pavement that had been grass just days ago. I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff. The woman on the line thought I was joking when I said someone had built a parking garage on my land. Her tone changed real fast when I growled back, I'm not joking. I'm not even part of that damn HOA. She said they'd seen someone. An hour later, a deputy showed up. Young guy, name tag Red Carlson. He stepped out of his cruiser, took one look at the garage and said, Sir, what the hell? We walked the land. I showed him my deed, the survey, the titles. He said he'd file a report and contact the HOA and county. But even then, even with him nodding and scribbling notes, I could see it in his eyes. He'd never seen something like this before. Neither had I. I don't care how long you've lived or how much you've seen. There comes a moment when you feel the shift, when you realize something fundamental has broken. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't even simple fraud. This was a hostile takeover done in the daylight, done with paperwork and fake signatures and smiling strangers who believed their fantasy of ownership could rewrite reality. And the worst part? They thought I wouldn't fight. They thought a man near 60, retired, living quiet with his horses and his dog, wouldn't dare make noise. But I wasn't raised to roll over. And if you're reading this and you've ever fought for a scrap of land, ever lost sleep protecting something that mattered, then you know there's a moment when you stop asking for help. You stop waiting for someone to show up with answers. You draw a line. In dirt. In concrete. In blood, if you have to. That line had just been crossed. And the next person who tried to claim my land as theirs was going to learn that this ranch wasn't just a retirement plan. It was my life, my legacy, my last stand. And I hadn't even unpacked my damn suitcase. I didn't sleep that first night. Couldn't. I just sat on the edge of my bed, boots still on, hat resting in my lap, the room too quiet to match the chaos churning in my chest. Moose stayed close, head on my boot, sensing the shift. Dogs know. They always know when something sacred's been violated. That parking garage wasn't just an eyesore. It was a declaration of war. And not the kind with gunshots and shouting. No, this was the quiet kind. The kind where they smile while they take. The kind where they build right over your damn memories and call it community improvement. Next morning, I walked the perimeter of my property with a coffee in one hand and a camera in the other. Every inch I'd once known like my own skin now looked altered. What used to be wild grass and split-rail fences was now gravel, tire tracks, and bright orange markers staked into the soil like tiny warnings. I followed those markers to the back edge of the garage and found something that turned my stomach, a row of capped metal pipes sticking up out of the dirt, freshly installed. Utilities. Someone wasn't just building a garage. They were laying infrastructure. That meant electricity, water, maybe fiber lines. They weren't planning to use my land. They were planning to own it permanently. That's not trespassing. That's a takeover. I called Hank. He was already on his way over, said he didn't sleep much either. He pulled up in his old Ford, the kind with paint faded from too many summers and a dash full of crumpled receipts and half-used pens. First thing he said as he stepped out, "They got nerves of steel, Ethan. Nerves are a devil's deal." He tossed me a manila folder. Inside were printouts from the county clerk's website, screenshots Hank had pulled overnight. "Look at this," he muttered. "They filed something called a temporary easement agreement on your parcel 2 weeks ago. Lists you as the signatory. Except the signature? That ain't yours." He was right. It looked like mine, same slant, same loop on the S, but I'd never signed that paper. Never saw it. Never even heard of a temporary easement, much less agreed to one. They had this queued up before you left for Montana. They timed it. So you're saying this wasn't just a mistake? I asked. I'm saying this was planned. That's when I realized how deep the rot could go. See, most folks think if you got a deed, you've got safety. You hold the title to your land and that's the end of it. What they don't tell you is that there's always a back door, always a form, always a loophole just waiting to be filled in by someone with a fake pen and a real motive. That afternoon, I drove into the county office myself. The building smelled like burnt coffee and dusty carpet. The clerk behind the counter, a twitchy kid named Ben, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I handed him my ID and asked for every permit, plan, and filing related to my land from the past 6 months. He hesitated, typed, and frowned. Sir, according to this, the HOA has been granted development access based on your approval. That's impossible, I said. This approval is based on a signed document with my name. Yes? He nodded. I leaned over the counter. Then I want to see that signature. Now. He printed it out. There it was again, my name on the line in ink I'd never touched on a form I'd never read. This time it wasn't just a temporary easement. It was a 40-year lease agreement. 40 years. $1 a year. For land I'd paid for with blood and overtime shifts. I stared at that page like it might explain itself. It didn't, but the notary's signature did. L. Whitmore. That name lit a fuse in my brain. Lena Whitmore, legal counsel for the HOA. She'd visited me once the year before, smiling, soft voice, offered to help me transition into community use. I told her politely to get off my land. I guess she didn't take that well. Or maybe she took it personally. I left the office and called Grayson, my attorney. He didn't say much at first, just listened. Then he asked for copies. Fax them to me now, he said. I'll meet you at the ranch by sundown. When I got home, Hank was already there, standing on the porch with Moose at his feet. But it wasn't just Hank. There were people at my gate. 3 of them, dressed sharp. One had a clipboard. Another had a tablet. The third was wearing a damn measuring wheel on his belt. I stormed down the drive. Can I help you? I asked, voice sharp. Clipboard guy smiled. Afternoon, sir. We're here on behalf of Willow Creek Hills HOA. We're surveying for a security checkpoint installation. Shouldn't take long. You're trespassing, I said flatly. This is private land. He tapped his papers. Not according to these documents, sir. We're authorized to proceed. Authorized by a forgery, I snapped. Now get the hell off my land before I call the sheriff. Moose growled low. That got their attention. They hesitated. One of them tried to protest, but I stepped forward. Move, I said. They moved. 15 minutes later, Carlson showed up. He looked tired. Like this was the 10th mess of the day and the worst by far. I handed him the papers. He read them carefully, lips thinning with every paragraph. You've got yourself a serious case here, he muttered. This ain't just trespassing. This is organized fraud. But if the HOA has support inside the county office, this could get messy. I don't care how messy it gets, I said. I want them out, and I want that garage torn down. Carlson looked at me hard. Then you better be ready to fight like hell. And I was. Because let me tell you something, once someone crosses that line and steals from you, not with guns or threats, but with silence and paperwork and legalese, they're betting on your exhaustion. They're betting that you'll give up before they run out of forms. But I wasn't built for giving up, and I damn sure wasn't going to be bullied off the land I bled for. That night, Lisa called. My daughter. Strong girl. Smarter than me in 100 ways. I told her everything. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just said, Dad, they don't know who they're messing with. She was right, because come hell or lawsuits, I wasn't going anywhere. And if the HOA wanted to test the limits of my patience, they were about to find out I didn't have any left. By the time Grayson pulled into the ranch that evening, the clouds had turned bruised, purple, and the wind had picked up, like even the sky knew something was about to crack wide open. He stepped out of his car wearing that old denim blazer he always wore when he meant business, creased at the elbows, pockets stuffed with legal pads and folded affidavits. He didn't even wait for coffee. Just marched straight into my kitchen, dropped a stack of files on the table, and said, "They've been planning this for over a year, Ethan." He laid out the paperwork like a hand of bad poker cards. "Look here," he said, pointing at a filing date from 10 months ago. "That's when the initial permit request went in. Filed under a shell company, approved in under 48 hours, and guess who stamped it?" I stared. "Dave Keller," he said. "Land use director. Been with the county 12 years. No flags, no audits, no oversight. But here's the kicker. He's also listed as a private consultant for Silver Ridge Development on 2 other commercial projects in the state. So he's on their payroll," I said. "Off the books, but yes," Grayson nodded. "And it gets worse. A garage? It was never meant to be just for overflow parking. That was a smokescreen. A way to get underground access to your acreage without raising suspicion. The real plan was to lay fiber, run utility lines, and use your property as a pass-through to the commercial zone they're building on the other side." I leaned back, heart thudding. They were trying to build a whole damn city under my feet. Grayson nodded. "And if you hadn't come back from Montana when you did, they might have finished it before anyone noticed." Outside, the wind howled against the eaves. Moose paced near the window, ears perked. Something was off. I stood, walked to the porch, and looked out toward the garage. That's when I saw the lights. Not just the usual dull glow from the flood lamps. These were brighter, scattered, movement. Trucks, 4 of them. Late-night construction crews sneaking in while the world slept. My stomach turned. "They're back," I muttered. Grayson joined me at the door. "You sure? Look for yourself," I said, grabbing my flashlight and shotgun. "You stay here. I'll deal with this." "Not a chance," he said, grabbing his coat. We moved quick, staying low behind the tree line. By the time we reached the back ridge, we had a clear view of the garage. Men in reflective vests moved like shadows across the concrete. One of them was hauling cable reels. Another was bent over a trench with what looked like a surveying scope. That's when I spotted the backhoe, its engine idling, bucket half buried in my dirt. "They're digging again," I whispered. "They're not even waiting for sunrise." "This is a full breach," Grayson said. "We need proof." I raised my phone, took pictures, video, time-stamped it all. Then something caught my eye. A metal box near the trench, half buried and marked with a name I didn't recognize. Silver Ridge Utility Core number 17. I looked at Grayson. "That doesn't sound like a parking project." "No," he said. "That sounds like infrastructure for a substation." And just like that, the pieces clicked. This wasn't just about stealing land. They were laying the foundation for something massive. Underground energy lines, data channels, maybe even a private grid. And the garage? Just a disguise. A Trojan horse. We slipped back to the barn, locked the doors, and made calls. Hank showed up 15 minutes later, still in his pajamas, shotgun in one hand, a thermos in the other. Lisa was on video chat again, now pulling in favors from an old college friend who worked in investigative journalism. "We've got to hit back fast," I said. "Expose them. Get the law on our side before they erase every trace." "Already working on it," Lisa said. "We've got 2 reporters heading your way by morning." I couldn't sleep. Again. Just sat at the table with maps spread out, highlighting every inch they touched. Trench lines, cable paths, unauthorized easements. Moose stayed close, tail thumping gently against the floor like a heartbeat. At 3:17 a.m., a motion alert buzzed my phone. I checked the gate cam. 4 men, no headlights, shovels, and something bulky wrapped in tarp. I cursed under my breath and grabbed my flashlight. "What now?" Grayson groaned from the couch. "Burial run," I said. "They're planting something. Probably more cables." He stood instantly. "We'll go together." We did. This time, I wasn't hiding in shadows. I lit them up as soon as I was close. Hands where I can see them, I yelled. The men froze. One took off running. Moose bolted after him. The rest just stood there, busted mid-dig, guilty as sin. I marched forward, shotgun down, but visible. Who sent you? No answer. Just blank stares and shallow breaths. That tarp better be legal, I said. Grayson ripped it off. Underneath, a spool of high-capacity fiber optic cable. New, expensive, and clearly not authorized. You're on private land, I growled, and now you're in a heap of trouble. Carlson arrived fast, God bless that man, and took over. One of the workers cracked, said they were subcontractors. Hired off Craigslist, cash per day, no questions. Typical shell game, no records, no accountability, but we had enough evidence, witnesses, and motive. Carlson detained the crew and called in the county inspector. Things moved quickly after that. A judge signed an emergency stop work order. The state attorney's office took interest. Lisa's journalist friends arrived and got the full story. We showed them everything. By the time they left, the headline was already typed. Ho's Hidden Empire. Texas ranch owner uncovers a legal land grab scheme. That night, the garage sat quiet, floodlights off for the first time. I stood beside Hank on the porch, both of us sipping black coffee, letting the silence settle. Think they'll come back? He asked. They're not done, I said. They've still got money, still got county connections, but now we've got eyes on them. Moose barked once, short and sharp, like a warning, or maybe a promise. I turned toward the horizon, the land stretching out under a sky still holding its breath. They wanted a fight, I said. Now they've got one. The morning broke sharp and cold, with a wind that sliced through denim and made the rusted chains on the old barn creak like whispers from another life. I hadn't slept. My mind kept turning over the same images like stones in a stream, silver ridge trucks in the night, men burying cables, that smug look on Dolores's face when she thought she had one. Moose sat at the porch steps, his ears trained on the gravel path like he knew someone was coming. And they were. Not long after sunrise, a white van with no markings rolled up the drive, kicking up clouds of dust. It wasn't the sheriff. It wasn't media. It was something else, slower, quieter, more calculated. Out stepped a man in a tailored jacket with a clipboard, glasses too polished for someone who claimed to be from municipal oversight. He looked around, took a breath of ranch air like it offended him, and said, Mr. Sanders, we're here to conduct a survey of potential easement adjustments pending community reassessment. I stared at him. This land ain't up for reassessment, I said. It's mine. He smiled in that bureaucratic way, where everything's polite but nothing's real. We have documentation indicating a pending review due to infrastructure necessity. Let me guess, I said, filed by Willow Creek Hills HOA? He blinked, then recovered. The documentation does include references to a subdivision management board. You've got 5 minutes to get off my land, I said, for if you keep quoting nonsense. He hesitated. You don't understand the scope of this, sir. I stepped closer. No, son, you don't. He turned and left without another word, but I knew that van was the first wave. The quiet probe before the storm. Later that day, Grayson called. I found something, he said, hidden deep in the county's contractor logs. A string of backdoor permits approved under emergency clauses, fire mitigation, disaster preparedness, utility urgency, all signed off by the same person, Dave Keller. That name again, I said. He's not just helping them. He's the architect. Every dirty permit runs through him. I stood by the window looking out at the fields. You think he's getting paid? Not directly, Grayson said. But I traced a property purchased in his wife's name. Brand new house. Paid in full. No mortgage. And guess who the builder was? Silver Ridge, I said. Bingo. My hand clenched around the phone. We need to burn it down, I said. Not the garage, the whole operation. Grayson paused. You thinking media? I'm thinking more than that. They're hiding behind law, permits, forms, fine. Let's show the world what those papers really cover up. That night, Lisa and Hank and I set up what we now called the war room. Maps taped to the barn walls, printouts, photos, recordings. Grayson brought in a tech guy, a former Marine named Tim, who had spent the last decade exposing corruption in city contracts. Tim set up routers, cameras, a satellite feed. We're going live, he said. You want to hit them where it hurts? Hit the reputation. So we did. The next morning, a live broadcast started under the rafters of my barn. It wasn't flashy. No anchors. No music. Just me, an old man in a flannel shirt, standing in front of the sign that read Sanders Ranch EST 1994 and telling my story to the world. I laid it all out, how they forged my signature, built on my land, buried illegal lines, threatened my family. I held up photos, showed videos, played the security footage of night crews sneaking in. Then I read from the stolen documents. Phase 2 utility expansion, airstrip approval, private grid installation. Lisa joined me, voice shaking but strong. They're trying to erase this land, she said. Not just from a map, but from memory. The video went viral. Calls poured in. Reporters, activists, veterans, farmers from Nebraska. A rancher from New Mexico who said the exact same thing had happened to his uncle. Same company, different county. We weren't alone. We never were. The following day, the county board tried damage control, held a press conference, claimed it was all a misunderstanding. That's when Grayson stepped in, armed with documents and a subpoena. You want misunderstanding? He told the cameras. Here's a sworn affidavit from a county clerk admitting they were ordered not to flag any HOA filings tied to Willow Creek Hills. Here's a financial report showing donations from Silver Ridge to the board chairman's reelection campaign. And here, he held up a sealed envelope, is a list of internal emails we obtained showing full awareness of the land grab scheme. The board went pale. They tried to walk it back, but the storm was too big. Even the governor's office made a statement. We will not tolerate abuse of eminent domain by private interests. That night, just when I thought it was over, it got worse. The power went out. Not just the barn. The whole ranch. I checked the backup batteries, ripped out. Wires cleanly cut. Moose barked like hell, pacing the fence line. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, scanned the fields. Nothing. But I knew what it meant. They weren't giving up. They were switching tactics. Fear. Harassment. Next came the mail, letters with no return address. Threats. Offers. Bribes. One envelope had a check for $3 million with a note that read, "Leave quietly, and you never hear from us again." I burned it in the fire pit. This ain't about money, I said to Lisa. It's about principle. She nodded. Then let's finish it. And we did. We filed a federal civil suit. Grayson brought in a team of legal pit bulls who specialized in land fraud. Depositions were taken. Keller was suspended. Dolores disappeared. Craig Bellamy got indicted. The Silver Ridge name was dragged through every local paper in the state. But the real victory came when the court ruled in my favor. Total land rights restored, garage to be demolished at their cost, and full investigation opened into county corruption. The day the ruling came down, I walked the ridge above the garage and watched the machines tear it apart, chunk by chunk. Concrete turned to rubble. Rebar snapped. The parking garage that stood as a monument to arrogance and theft was reduced to dust. And me? I stood there with Moose, hand resting on his back, watching justice happen not in a courtroom but in the soil where it was stolen. That night, Lisa poured us each a glass of bourbon. Hank raised his like a salute. To the last honest man in Texas, he said. I shook my head. Nah. Just the loudest. And in that moment, With the stars above and the land below, I finally felt peace again. Not the kind you find in silence, but the kind you earn after fighting like hell for something no one else can see but you. The sky was different that morning. Not quieter, not softer, just heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. I stood at the edge of the rebuilt fence, boots planted firm in the dirt, looking out over the open field where that godforsaken garage used to stand. It was gone now. Completely. Demolished, hauled away, buried under layers of apology and legal paperwork. But peace doesn't come just because they stop swinging hammers. Sometimes the silence after a battle feels louder than the bullets ever did. I should have felt relieved, victorious even. But instead, something gnawed at me. Because men like Craig Bellamy and suits like Robert Keane didn't just disappear when the camera stopped rolling. They stepped back, circled, and waited for you to let your guard down. And me? I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. The state attorney's office had opened formal proceedings against Willow Creek Hills, HOA, and Silver Ridge Corporate, sure. They'd issued warrants, arrested a few middlemen, and put out statements about ongoing investigations. But I knew better than to trust the word of politicians. They'd shut the barn door only after the horse ran off, and that's when the letters started again. Only this time they weren't anonymous. Certified mail, stamped official. One from the IRS claiming an audit had been triggered by a discrepancy in property usage. Another from the county zoning board suggesting my barn solar array might violate new energy codes. I wasn't surprised. They couldn't take the land by force, so they'd bury me in bureaucracy. Death by 1,000 papers. I called Grayson. They're trying to bleed me dry, I said. Delay, distract, overwhelm. Classic stall tactic, he replied. They want you to give up, sell, move on. Then we fight again. Not in court this time, he said. Not only, anyway. And that's when the idea came. Not mine. Lisa's. She was watching moose play in the yard when she said it. Dad, what if we turn this place into something bigger? A sanctuary. Spotlight. Make it impossible for them to bury us quietly. I looked at her. You mean open it up? To people like us, folks who've been pushed, threatened, scared off their land. There are more of us than you think. She was right. Over the past month, I'd gotten hundreds of letters, emails, messages from men in their 60s, 70s, ranchers, vets, truck drivers, small business owners, all saying the same thing. They tried this with me too. Some had lost the fight. Others were still hanging on. A few were ready to go down swinging. But all of them needed a flag in the ground. So that's what we gave them. We named it Fireline Ranch, in honor of the crews I served with during my firefighting days. A place that wouldn't just stand, it'd stand for something. Grayson helped us establish a nonprofit. Lisa built a website. Hank made calls to friends from his law enforcement days. We turned my barn into a field office, a public space, a war memorial for property owners who never got justice. Folks started showing up. An old logger from Arkansas who lost his forest to a utility easement, a retired postal worker from Nevada whose backyard was turned into a pipeline trench, a Navajo grandmother from Arizona who brought photos of her family stolen well. They came with stories. They left with fire in their eyes. And then came the day we got an envelope we weren't expecting. It was from a man named Adam Kane. He used to be an engineer at Silver Ridge. Said he wanted to meet, off the record. We drove 2 hours out to a diner near Waco. He sat alone at a corner booth, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I designed the underground network, he said. I didn't know it was being used illegally until after the first project broke ground. He pushed a flash drive across the table. Every blueprint, every fake permit, internal memos, code names, timelines, even names of offshore accounts. I stared at him. Why give this to me? He shrugged. Because I believe in land, and I've seen what they do to men like you. They won't stop. They just hide better. That drive was gold. With it, Grayson filed a class action against Silver Ridge's parent company. We looped in the state comptroller, federal fraud investigators, even the Department of the Interior. The press took notice, real notice. And that's when Silver Ridge fired back the only way they knew how. They offered to buy me out again, not 2 million this time. 10. In cash, no strings, no taxes, just a clean exit. Lisa read the letter out loud, then looked at me. I didn't say a word. I walked out to the field, dug a hole with my hands, and buried the offer under a pile of horse manure. Then I went back inside and started making calls. That week, we held the first Fireline Assembly, a gathering of 50 landowners from across the country, veterans, farmers, single moms, all with stories that echoed mine. We shared tactics, lawyers, media contacts. We built a network, a resistance, a brotherhood. I was no longer the target. I was the trigger. And word spread. The county dropped its zoning complaints. The IRS closed its audit. The state launched a full-scale investigation into eminent domain abuses across 5 counties. Dolores was indicted. Craig Bellamy disappeared from the public eye. But the fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because for every crooked executive or HOA stooge we exposed, there were 10 more waiting in the wings. So we kept going. Lisa started a podcast. Hank wrote a column. We made short videos explaining property rights in plain English, no legal jargon, just truth. And every now and then I'd walk out to the ridge, stand where that garage once loomed, and remember what it felt like the first time I saw it. The rage, the betrayal, the disbelief. I'd breathe in the wind, feel the dirt under my boots, and whisper to myself, not on my land, not ever again. And that, my friend, is how you hold the line. Not with noise, not with violence, but with grit, memory, and one hell of a spine. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been pushed, silenced, ignored, know this. You are not alone. You are not powerless. And if they come for you, you fight like hell with everything you've got. Because your land doesn't just hold your house. It holds your history, your family, your pride. And no paper, no permit, no suit and a tie will ever take that away. Not if you stand. Not if you fight. Not if you remember who you are. I'm Ethan Sanders, and I'm still here, still standing, still free.